Hi, everybody. Welcome to this discussion about the old classic fiddle tune, Whiskey Before Breakfast. My name's Max, and we're going to be talking about a couple of ways to play this song on the banjo. I've got two versions today, so let me get the first one, which is a single string exercise, and talk about it. And then we'll take a deeper dive into the melodic version that brings out more of the three-finger picking style. Be right back. Okay, I put up a tablature of Whiskey Before Breakfast in the single string style. What this is simply to play each note using just your thumb and your index finger. I'm sure many of you know that Don Reno was one of the first banjo players, at least in the bluegrass style, to play this way, and many others have gone far beyond, like Bela Fleck and others in their ability to use a single string playing. To me, this kind of imitates the Celtic style of tenor banjo playing. The real point of this lesson, this exercise, is to get you used to using thumb, index, so that it can be in your playing. As you'll see in the melodic part, the melodic version of the tune, we will be doing some single string work. I like this style because it's good exercise for both your left hand and your right hand. On your right hand, which is notated below the notes, thumb one, thumb one, etc., the goal is to make it as smooth as possible, both for timing, of course, and also in terms of tone. You want to make it sound nice and smooth. Add the emphasis where you want to, but make sure you've got it under control, playing sections that don't need as much emphasis. It's also good for your left hand. Take a look down in the B part. In the second measure of the B part, you'll see the number 4 above fret number 5, and that means use your pinky finger. I don't know about you, but my pinky finger is a little bit lazy, so I need to give it a workout from time to time. I've recorded it, and let me play that for you now. One time through on the A part and one time on the B part. Okay, I hope that will be a useful exercise for you, both for this song and for others. It's a good workout for your hands. Just take it easy and develop speed, like always, and make sure you got your tone and timing together while you work on it. Now let's talk about the melodic version of Whiskey Before Breakfast. I think there's some cool stuff going on with this song, and let me just point out a couple of things before we dive deep on the tablature. One of the interesting things that you'll see right off the bat is the song is in the key of D, but we're playing in regular G tuning. That's kind of nice. By the way, I got this tab originally from an old tab of Bela Fleck, and I think I've kind of mutated it over the years into the version you see here today, but it was originally from Bela. And he did some nice things with it, as he usually does. For example, it is in the key of D, and of course there are 2 D strings on the banjo, just like there are 2 G strings. So he uses that to good advantage. As we go through this song, you'll see right at the top that he uses the open first string, the open high D string, as a drone to start the tune. And he also uses it nicely as a what would you call it, a transition between the low end, the low notes in the song, and the higher notes up the neck. This goes to the second point, which is this arrangement takes good advantage of playing scales on the interior strings, the second and the third and the fourth strings of the banjo, so that It makes the hand movement a little more efficient and prevents too much jumping around between the high and low parts of the song. There is quite a range here. Third, throughout the song, there's the use of partial chord positions. What I mean by that is that it uses the familiar chords that we all know, like a D bar chord or a F-shape A chord and so on. However, instead of fingering the whole chord, there's 2 or 3 fingers that are used instead of playing all 4 notes on the chord. This also helps reduce the size of the jumps that you have to make up and down the neck. Finally, there's some single string work right at the end of the song. This is necessary to hit those melody notes on the low end of the instrument, and also I think gives it a little bit of that Celtic vibe. I'll play each part for you now at 72 beats per minute on the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there you go. Now let's talk about it a little bit. The song starts off nicely right in the first measure with those D drones. Instead of a G drone on the 5th string like we're used to in most tunes in G or A, we've got the drones on that open D string, which gives us a nice ring as we make the triad to go right up the neck. And as you'll see, there's a lot of motion up and down the neck. So the first couple of measures are getting up the neck, and then measures 3 and 4, starting on the first G chord, we're coming back down again. And take a look at that. That's where we start to see the partial chords on that first G. That is just a little bit of the D-shaped G chord that we're familiar with in the middle of the neck. And then that D chord is the top end of a D bar chord. Then coming down the scale, it uses the interior strings. You see the 9th fret of the 3rd string and hit a couple of times. And then at the end of that 4th measure, 5, 6, 7. That is a partial A chord, the good old familiar A chord that we use in so many bluegrass songs. Now, the same pattern of going up the neck and coming back down repeats starting at measure 5, the last 4 measures of the A section. It's the same idea. Play a arpeggio going up, partial chord forms to make the melody on the high notes, interior scale coming back down, and then a partial A chord to finish the first part of the song. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the B part too. Starts off right away with that low arpeggio from the low D up to the open D on the first string. And that's a partial chord too. That's really just a part of the regular old first position D chord that we're all so used to. Take a look at the underneath. In this section, I've put more right hand fingerings underneath, and the left hand fingerings are up above the little numbers that you'll see in measure 10 and elsewhere to point out what's going on there. But all of that it's basically a D chord in that measure number 9. Now starting in measure 10 and going into measure 14, at the bottom is an interesting chord position that you can use for all those measures, because it looks a little busy in there with the tablature, but if you get your hand in the right position, you can easily get to all the notes that are there. I'm going to stop for just a second and show you what that looks like. Okay, so take a look at this here. This chord form that's in measures 10 through 14 looks like this. And it's interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's really a A6 chord. For you chord freaks out there, you'd see that a regular A chord looks like this. Here's a, but your A6. So it is really just a variation on an A chord. You have to rearrange your fingers a little bit in order to make it work right compared to the regular A chord. The other part of it is that it lays down really nicely once you get used to it. You got the first finger on the first string, the second finger on the second string, the third fret on the third finger on the third string, and the fourth finger on the fourth string. And you don't have to squeeze it too hard. In fact, that's one of the keys when you're using partial chords or different chord forms. Try and keep your hand loose so that you're not locked up and you can maintain the flexibility that you need in your hand, and you can take advantage of these hand positions. So once you get used to it, it feels nice too, because there's just, you know, 4th fret, 5th fret, 6th fret, and 7th fret. Sounds nice too. Okay, now take a look next at measure 12. That's the first A chord in the B part, 3rd line of the tablature here. I've always found that piece to be a little bit challenging. Once again, we've got a descending scale, but there's a couple of things that I think make it a little tricky when you're trying to play it. First of all, you can see down below that the fingering to start the run down is mainly middle finger and index finger, and you know, most players don't have as much strength in those two fingers as they do in, say, using thumb and index finger as you would in single sting style or in other Scruggs styles. Also, the index finger has to make a little bit of a jump starting on the 5th note. That's the 6th fret of the G string there, because it's been playing on the B string, but now it has to move down after your middle finger has hit the open D string so that the rundown can finish. So your index finger might not be quite used to that jump. It's a small detail, but I find that's one that can trip you up if you're not aware of it. And then the last 2 notes of that measure are pickup notes back to the second half of the B part here. Now, if you're having trouble with it, you can delete those 2 notes. Just don't play them. Play the first 6 notes, hit that 7th fret on the A string, the 7th fret on the D string, which is the A note, and just let that ring. That'll give you a little bit more time to reset and then play the last 4 measures of the song. Speaking of the last 4 measures of the song, take a look at the syncopation there. Da, 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 da. That is also a form of a descending scale, but it's syncopated da, 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 da in measure 13. But it's the same idea. Keep holding on to that chord form, of the A6 chord form, and that will help you get through it. Then finally, in the last 2 measures of the song is the single string work that brings it all the way down to the bottom and the end of the tune. But the key to playing that section, which isn't all that difficult itself, is to make sure that you start the fingering correctly in measure 14 on the D chord. Notice there's another one of those jumps from the middle finger on the open D chord to using the index finger to get the 2nd fret of the G string, the A note there. Again, that can feel a little unusual, so you may want to give that a little extra attention while you're working on it and make sure your hand is making the transition smoothly. I think we've all had the wonderful experience of starting a phrase using the wrong finger and then turning it into some kind of crazy banjo salad while we try to get back to a point where we're on track again. So that's why I point that out in the 14th measure. If you start there and get that fingering down, the last 2 measures aren't bad at all. So there you have it. That was a pretty quick rundown. So if you have any questions or want more detail, please feel free to shoot a message to the Facebook page, the BBMA Facebook page, and they know how to get a hold of me if you don't. And I'd be happy to talk about it with you a little bit. It is a little bit of a challenging tune, but I think it's really worth the effort because it'll help you get comfortable with D scales, with single string fingering, with partial scales, and all the stuff that we talked about. And I hope you'll find it worth the effort. Plus, it's just a great old tune, right? Everybody loves Whiskey Before Breakfast. So you'll be the hit at the jam session if you can play an arrangement like that. And of course, if you got your own arrangements, have at it. I hope I've added some ideas to your playing. So I hope everybody stays well. Speaking of jam sessions, I hope we can be out and about soon and get back to life as normal, whatever that is. Yeah, hope you all stay well. So I want to say bye from Maybelle. And bye from Monroe. And we hope that you enjoy the weather. We hope that you enjoy the music. And don't forget to support your local bands. Thanks. Bye-bye.